I almost scrolled past the comment that started this video. It sat under one of my own uploads, and it said something I've now seen in 100 forms, that a $400 superclone proves a $14,000 Rolex Submariner is a scam, and that the only thing left separating them is the name on the dial. I get the appeal of that line. I'd half believed a softer version of it myself until I went looking for the actual numbers, and the numbers told a stranger story than either the people defending Rolex or the people mocking it have noticed. The clone isn't dangerous to Rolex for the reason everyone repeats. It's dangerous because it answers, for the price of a weekend away, the one question Rolex's whole business depends on you never asking out loud. Start with the claim itself, the one nearly every watch channel has run for 2 years straight. The gap is gone. On the spec sheet, that is not a ridiculous thing to say. The current top-tier clones, built in the factories that absorbed the old noob supply network after it collapsed, use 904L stainless steel, the exact grade Rolex uses. They have the Cerachrom-style ceramic bezels, Rolex's proprietary Cerachrom being one of the few things a clone can approximate in shape, but not in the patented compound itself, the sapphire crystals. And as of the 2025 versions, they are weight matched to the originals and running cloned copies of the Rolex Caliber 3235, Rolex's own flagship movement. The Federation of the Swiss watch industry's own experts, quoted in the 2025 OECD report, admit the quality now runs from crude junk all the way to near identical. That claim survives because it is a satisfying story and an easy one to film. Hold two watches up, dare the audience to tell them apart, watch the view count climb. But indistinguishable on the wrist is not new, and it was never the threat. Convincing fakes have existed for decades. If fooling a stranger at a dinner table could break Rolex, Rolex would have broken in the 1990s. The watch was never the product, the price was. And here is one place the spec sheet quietly lies. The genuine Caliber 3235 runs a chronergy escapement and a parachrome hairspring, a blue niobium zirconium alloy that Rolex patents and produces in-house, and that gives it 10 times the resistance to magnetic fields and to shock that a conventional spring offers. Clone movements copy the architecture. They cannot copy the metallurgy. The result is that a real Rolex Submariner holds superlative chronometer certification, Rolex's own internal standard that tightens the already strict COSC chronometer benchmark to -2 plus 2 seconds per day, tested after casing. A clone movement running a copy of the Caliber 3235 will drift. Whether that drift matters to you is a different question, but it is real. And it is one of the honest answers to what part of the $13,600 is for. So look at that price as a machine instead of a sticker. Rolex builds around 1.25 million watches a year, 1.24 million in 2023 by Morgan Stanley and LuxeConsult's estimate. Then in 2024, with demand still clearly there, it did something that would get an ordinary executive fired. It cut production down to roughly 1.18 million units, and revenue rose anyway to a record 10.5 billion Swiss francs. Fewer watches, more money, on purpose. The average price of a Rolex climbed from about 11,500 francs in 2021 to over 12,000 the next year, and it has not stopped since. That is not how a manufacturer behaves. It is how a scarcity engine behaves. Rolex holds close to a third of the entire luxury watch market and outsells the next 5 brands: Cartier, Omega, Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, and Richard Mille combined. It is owned by the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, a private charitable foundation that publishes no audited accounts, a structure that insulates Rolex from shareholder pressure to chase volume and lets it manufacture scarcity as deliberate policy. So the $14,000 figure attached to a Submariner on the secondary market is not a cost anyone can check. It is a position the market agreed to hold. And a $400 object that looks identical now stands right beside that position asking what the difference is made of. Now, before we get to the resale data, one distinction worth making: the $400 superclone and the gray market are not the same thing. Gray market watches are genuine Rolex pieces purchased through channels outside the official authorized dealer network, often imported from lower markup regions and sold without the manufacturer warranty. They are real watches at a discount. Super clones are counterfeits. Conflating the two matters here because the gray market is actually one of the mechanisms that set the resale floor, while counterfeits are the thing eroding confidence in that floor. When you hear that pre-owned prices have softened, some of that is gray market pressure on the AD premium, and some of it is something else entirely. The column holding the whole structure up is resale. What made a Submariner feel different from any other expensive purchase was the belief that it was not really spending, that it was money parked somewhere that held, maybe even grew. That belief is the load-bearing wall, and it is the one cracking with no help from any clone. The pre-owned market has been sliding since it peaked in the spring of 2022. Across the 2 years into mid-2025, WatchCharts measured GMT Masters down 9.7%, Submariners down 11.1%, and Daytonas down 12.9%, with the steel sport models, the supposed blue chips, falling faster than the quiet date just. Put one watch under the microscope and it sharpens. Bob's watches tracked a single Submariner reference from a peak of $17,206 in March of 2022 down to $11,785 that December, and resting near $13,426 by the middle of 2025. Early in 2025, pre-owned Rolex prices hit their lowest point since 2020. This is the part that actually reaches you, the part the comment under my video skipped right over. When you weigh a Submariner, you aren't really deciding whether it keeps time better than a $300 Seiko. You already know it doesn't. Not in any way your wrist will ever feel. Even granting the superlative chronometer accuracy edge, no human wrist notices 2 seconds of drift per day. You're betting that the resale premium will still be standing the day you want out. The clone didn't invent that bet, it just dragged the stakes into the light by setting a $400 version of the same silhouette down in the same room. Now let's look at the OECD data, because this is where the argument stops being a hobbyist's and becomes a balance sheet one. The OECD's 2025 report valued fake watches, infringing Swiss brands, at $1.88 billion in a single year, over 40% of every counterfeit Swiss branded good of any kind, and nearly 8% of all legitimate Swiss watch exports. Watches are the single most counterfeited product category in their data. More than half of counterfeit watches seized by customs worldwide in that window carried a Swiss name. Swiss watchmakers lost an estimated $3 billion in sales. So while the floor under resale softens and a near-perfect copy sits in the room for $400, Rolex's answer was to raise prices again, about 7% in January of 2026, steel up 5%, gold up 8 to 9%. The two ends are closing on the middle. The resale premium that justified the number is sagging, the retail number keeps climbing, and the visual exclusivity the whole arrangement quietly ran on now sells in a form most people could not pick out of a lineup for about the price of a plane ticket. Which brings me back to that comment. The man was right that something had broken. He had just misread what it was. The $400 clone did not prove the Rolex Submariner was fake value. It proved the value was never primarily in the watch, not in the Serichrome bezel, not in the caliber 3235 with its parachrome hairspring, not in the superlative chronometer certification, real as all of those things are. It was in the number. And there is now a number standing beside it in matching 904L steel, asking what the other $13,600 was ever for. Rolex spent 100 years making sure nobody asked that out loud. The factories just answered it for $400.